Hello everybody. I think I'm live. If somebody can give me a thumbs up. I just realized I have total pool hair, so excuse me while I put a comb through it. The kids are doing swim classes and Ollie, actually I have to go in the, sorry to wiggle the camera, I'm trying to find a better camera angle here. All right, let me find somewhere where I can prop this camera up and be at a good angle. Maybe here. Does this work? I think this will work. There we go. Ha! Okay. I just need to get in front of it. Okay. Am I visible? I'm visible. Okay, my pool hair is still showing. So, sorry, I forgot about that. So, with Ollie, I actually have to get in the pool. He's doing Star Babies. And he's doing okay with it. He's a little bit more scared of the water than some of my kids have been. But he's getting better. And hopefully, in no time, he'll enjoy the water. All right, sorry for a rough beginning. I have not seen any of the comments by anybody. So, I'm going to try to see if I can see it. There we go. Hello to everybody who joined. I cannot go back through the messages to see. Oh, yes, I can. All right. Hi, Marina. Hi, Faith Unwavering. Hi, Marta. Good to see you. Hi, AM. And here I can screen. Hi, Valerie. Hi, Natalie. And hi, Leslie. Hi, Alo. Thanks for joining. So today's topic, I wanted to talk about traveling with kids. And if you have any questions or you have tips you want to share, please throw those in the comments. So I got the idea because I read an article this morning, I think it was on Facebook in my feed, from some mommy page, and it was saying that a flight had to turn around and go back to the gate. I mean, they'd already taken off. They had to turn around and get landing clearance and go back to the gate because a mom had forgotten her baby in the terminal. And of course the com's like, how can you forget your baby? And I was wondering the same. But my guess is that this lady probably was traveling with more than one child. And maybe when they said baby, they really meant like the toddler, not like a baby. And that, you know, maybe she was traveling with 4 or 5 kids and didn't realize until later that the 3-year-old was missing or something like that. You know, the article did not, I read the article and the article did not explain these details of whether she had other kids or how old the baby was. But in any case, I found that very shocking and I could not really identify with leaving your kid behind because I just flew across the world with 9 kids and nobody got left behind and not a single piece of luggage got left behind, and it went really well. So it occurred to me that maybe this would be a good topic. Not that I have it all together, because to not forget your kid at the airport, you don't really have to have it all together. That's really kind of low-level parenting. Hey, don't forget your kid at the gate while you board a plane. But I just thought maybe there are some tips that I could share. So if you have questions, leave them in the live chat. I can see it while they come in, and I will try to respond to them as we go. So I guess there's different levels of traveling with kids. There's the traveling that you just do locally in your personal vehicle, and that kind of travel is you're going to have to prepare differently for than, like, say, if you're taking a plane with a kid. So I'm going to start with like the simplest, most straightforward travel, and I'm going to build up from there to like taking a longer flight with a baby. I have one problem real quick though. Anna? Yes? Could you please come up here and see who's out of bed? It sounds like one of the little kids is out of bed and I'm on my video. Actually, is that John? It might be John up there. John got off shift this morning and he is possibly up there getting ready. It's hard to say. Might be one of the kids out of bed or it might be John. So let's start with locally. And I think just some things that always apply. Just simple things, and you might already know all this and this might be standard for you. So, you know, I apologize in advance. I think having your car prepped is really important. So in my car, I always carry bottled water, just the bottled water from Costco. I'm doing my live. Do you need something?
Get off this ring, possible.
I can't deal with him right now. I'm doing my live right now. Please shut the door. So I always carry water in my van. I don't carry food in my van for emergencies. And the reason for that is I've tried that in the past, and then the kids just get into it and they just make a mess with it. So I still don't have food for an emergency if I needed it. And instead we have food messes in the car, which I don't like. I don't like eating in the van. I try to avoid it as much as possible. I have a rule against it. Sometimes, you know, I bend the rule, but 9 times out of 10, I don't allow eating in the van. So I carry water, but I don't carry emergency food. Thank you, Lexi. And there are some other supplies that I like to keep in the van at all times. Trash bags at all times, trash bags and wipes, as well as cleaning wipes, so like Clorox wipes. And the trash bags serve 2 purposes. Number one, I always have a trash bag for trash in the van, and I just have it between the driver's seat and the passenger seat, and that way trash can go in there, and that makes traveling with kids a lot easier. Because even if you just make sure that all the trash gets in a trash as opposed to under a seat or stashed or whatever, that makes it so much easier. Because the problem is that mess attracts mess. So once you have a mess, then the kids just make more mess. So having trash bags is really important for the trash. But you can also use it for wet clothes if you have a problem with that. Or if your child has like a really bad blowout and the clothes and the diaper, like the diaper needs to go in the trash, but the clothes need to be bagged up, you can use the trash bags for that. Or if kids are feeling sick and they're like, I feel sick, you hand them a trash bag. So the trash bags are really important. So I carry water for emergencies. I carry trash bags. Wipes, obviously, for diapers. I always have wipes and diapers in there just in case somebody needs a diaper change. But even if you don't have a baby that's diaper age, the wipes are still great for cleaning up. And then the Clorox wipes I keep in there for mess cleanups. Like if something is just a mess, we clean that up. That's in the van. I don't carry spare clothes and stuff like that just because I feel that they clutter up the van. Now, I do have a little bin with emergency supplies, not edible. So we have like an emergency radio. We have window breaks and things like that in the van itself, but really just very minimal. And then I keep my stroller in the van all the time so that I'm always ready. If I need to go somewhere, it's always in there and ready. Pardon me. You did not take a nap, and you need to turn right around and go back to bed right now.
I don't know what's that.
It's nap time. Are your blinds shut in your room?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna send Anna. Anna?
Blinds are shut.
Okay, can you make sure that he gets tucked in, please?
Is Eva already?
No, Eva's asleep. You need to go to bed right now. Sorry, chaos reigns today. I guess the kids are not taking a nap like they should. Anna, could you please tuck Peter? And I thought he was already laid down. Now, when you actually go on a trip, it's helpful to make a list, and the list will look different for everybody, but I have basically the list of what I need to pack if we go on a day trip and things I need to pack if we go on an overnight trip. So for day trips for us, that means we need sun hats, we need sunblock. At that point, we do pack food, an ice chest because it is just too hot to not have an ice chest for the food. I do keep, so I said I have water in the van. In the winter, I just keep the water in the van. In the summer, I keep the water, the bottled water, in an ice chest, and I put ice in it. And I get one of those big bags from Sam's Club for $2, and that lasts 2 or 3 days. So every 2 or 3 days, I put a fresh bag of ice in. A cheaper way to do it, and sometimes when I remember to do this, is that I take a metal bowl with water and I freeze that, and it makes like a big, huge block of ice. And I put that in the ice chest. That's free. If you have a deep freezer, it will freeze that really fast. Excuse me. So that way you can always have cold water, which, you know, here otherwise the water, I mean, it's drinkable in an emergency, but it makes it a lot more pleasant when it's cold. So when we go somewhere for a day trip, always bring a spare outfit for the kids, even if you don't think you're going to need it. Bring a potty, because you might be between freeway exits. It might be 16 miles to the next exit, and you miss the exit, and someone needs to go to the bathroom. Have a potty. That's very, very helpful. And then, you know, just dump it out when you get to the next spot. And you see all these ideas on, I don't know, TikTok, Pinterest. I don't know where the young moms are getting all their ideas, but you see all these ideas of like snacks to eat while the kids are traveling to keep them busy. And they'll have like a tackle box, and in the tackle box they'll fill it up with goldfish and cut up fruit and gummy bears or whatnot. Or they have like these seat back pockets that they fill with, like, coloring things here and stickers and a snack and glow sticks. I don't do any of that. Number one, because I don't like eating in the van, and if we're going on a long drive, we still don't need to eat in the van. We need to get out and stretch our legs, use the bathroom, wash our hands anyway, so that's a good time to snack. But also it just clutters the van, and vehicles are not large. I mean, even an airplane, which is a lot larger than a vehicle, is not large. You still get cramped in there, and the more stuff is in there and the more cluttered it gets, the more unpleasant it is and stressful. So I don't find that kids need all these distractions. It's okay to look out the window and enjoy the scenery. It's okay to let their mind wander. And I think that we live in a society that is overly focused on distractions and just not being alone with your thoughts, for lack of a better expression. And I think it's really good for kids' creativity if they just look out the window and enjoy the scenery. I'm not saying not to bring any activities, but I think those where you like pack them a whole smorgasbord of 20 different activities, I think that's just total overkill. And I think that the kids are better off to just utilize what they have, maybe just a pen and paper that they can find or borrow from mom or something like that. So none of the snacky things, none of that, just, potty, trash bags, water, and hanging out with each other or hanging out with your own thoughts, looking out the window, enjoying the scenery, analyzing things, looking for animals. It's amazing what you can see when you slow down and look around and discover things, as it were. Now, I find that the biggest thing in general in traveling with kids is that you have to plan. And you have to plan the trip ahead of time. You can't just wake up on a Wednesday morning and be like, wow, I feel like taking a day trip. What shall we do? You really need to plan at least the night before, so you already know where you're going, what roads you're going to take, what you need to pack, maybe what you're going to do when you get to the destination. So planning is really huge when you're traveling with kids. And the more kids you're bringing and the fewer adult or older kid helpers you have, the more planning you will need to do. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't travel. Like, even when I was flying to Germany, when I just had 3 little kids, I remember the last time I flew to Germany by myself before this current trip, or this very recent trip, I should say. I went with 3 little kids. They were my 3 oldest boys, and at the time they were we flew out on Thanksgiving Day, so it was November, and it was right before John turned 1. So John was 1, or not quite 1, and Isaac was going to turn 2 that February, so he was 1. He was like, so I had like an 11-month-old, a 22-month-old, and then Solomon would have just been like 3 years old, like 38 months old. And it went fine. So I'm not discouraging you. If all you have is little kids, I'm not telling you not to fly. I'm not telling you not to travel. I'm just saying, and the more little kids you have, the more kids you have, and the fewer helpers you have, the more planning it will take. But by all means, make it a priority, because I think that experiences are so much more important than things. And it's those experiences that you'll remember. I don't remember the toys the kids had at that time. I mean, I remember a few, but I do remember the trip that we took, or the trips that we took together. Many of the trips we took during that time. Apparently everybody just feels like distracting today. Now, for this trip that we just took to Germany, I would say that I started planning. I purchased the tickets in September of 2022. In September of 2022, like at the end of September, and then we flew in May. So that would be 8 months that I bought the tickets, and that's pretty much when I started planning. Now, the things that will take the most planning is accommodations, if you're going to be buying accommodations, if you're not staying with family. Because when you're traveling with a lot of kids, you have specific needs. Now, I would recommend not staying with family when you have a lot of kids. It's not polite to them. You know, you can't really invade somebody's house, like in our case with 10 people. So I never even thought about, you know, staying with family, because most people don't even have 10 people in their household, let alone taking on 10 additional people. That would really be asking a lot. And I feel like by asking, it's already rude, because some people might not say no, even though they want to say no. So if you have I would say if you have more than 4 people, you really should not invite yourself to stay at other people's house. Now, if they invite you and they say, hey, we really want you to come, I know you have 6 or 8 people or whatever, and this is how we can house you all and put you all up, and that's different. But as far as inviting yourself, I really don't think you should. So if you're renting, we always prefer vacation rentals over hotels, simply because you kind of have your own 4 walls. You not have to worry about, you know, hotel staff or the kids being noisy and bothering other guests, and you can cook your own food usually. So that would be my first choice. Sometimes you can't, because there might not be a vacation rental available, or it might be cost prohibitive. And then when you're looking for hotel rooms, you want to look for one where you can fit more than 4 people in a room. Like, for example, larger hotel rooms that have 2 bedrooms, or they have, you know, a bed. Like, there are a lot of hotel rooms that can seat 6 or even 7 or 8 people. That's what we did on our most recent trip. We basically, at every place we went, if it wasn't a vacation rental, because we had a lot of hotel room rewards that we were using, then we just got the hotels that could sleep 6 or 7 person per room, and we just got 2 rooms. But you want to do that ahead of time, because those rooms, typically there's not a whole lot of them, and they book out, especially if you're traveling at a time when other people are traveling. Now, that's another thing in traveling with kids or lots of kids. Whenever possible, don't travel during peak season. So if you have a choice between going during spring break or going 2 weeks after spring break, by all means, go 2 weeks after spring break, because things will be less crowded. You're not going to wait in line anywhere. You have better availability. The staff will be less stressed. So just on all fronts, it's better not to travel with kids during peak season, which is one of the many benefits of homeschooling, is we get to travel when we want to. So we can travel when other kids are back in school, like we can travel during those time frames. For example, here in Arizona, kids go back to school in late July, very early August. So pretty much any time from like the beginning of August until mid-September, when they get their fall break, those 6 weeks, everything is pretty empty, especially once we get into September, because some schools in California don't start till September. So there's some stragglers still here vacationing in the state during August. But by the time September rolls around, it's pretty much a ghost town everywhere here. Same for May. If you're traveling in May, everybody's usually still in school. So whenever possible, you know, plan your trip in such a way that you're going during the off season, and plan it well in advance so you get the best prices, especially for flight tickets, and you can plan your accommodations, plan the outings. And basically all the planning you're doing ahead of time, you will then not have to do on the trip itself. Now, if you are somebody who likes to write down what you plan, I would not recommend using pen and paper, because then you have to carry that around with you. I would recommend doing something that has kind of like a cloud aspect to it. I like to use Google Drive for all these things. In Google Drive, you can make text documents, like kind of like a Word document, or you can do spreadsheets. And that's what I personally did for our most recent trip. I had spreadsheets for everything. I had spreadsheets set for every day. So Monday, you know, May, whatever, and then the outing and information and address and things like that. And the more you plan ahead of time, then on the day of, or when you're traveling, you don't have to waste any time on that. There will be so many unknowns that pop up while you're traveling that you will be glad not to have to deal with the planning and having to figure out, okay, here's where I get the best rate to go into this theme park. If you get that all figured out ahead of time, it will save you a lot of hassle, but it will also save you money. A lot of places offer discounts to homeschoolers, but you have to book it in advance. So again, the planning is really important for that. Now, as far as on the day of travel, now we're talking like actually going towards like a plane ride. So not like just general things, but Hi, Annabelle. Good to see you. But things that you actually want to do on the day of travel, whether that's a long drive or whether that's a plane ride or whatever it is. Be very careful what the kids eat. It should not be something that they could get sick on their stomach easily from, or that's just going to fill them with way too much sugar and be hyper. So Fruity Pebbles is probably not a good breakfast. You should focus on like protein and low sugar. The kids should be wearing something that they're comfortable in for like 24 hours. But at the same time, it should look somewhat, I don't want to say formal, but maybe a little bit more classy. Because kids tend to get grubby as they travel. And if they're grubby in sweats and flip-flops, they look a lot worse than if they're grubby in a polo shirt and like button-up shorts, like shorts that button, you know, not like an elastic waist, and nice tennis shoes or something like that. So you want to dress them comfortably, but you also want to dress them so they look a little bit nicer, because over the course of the travel day, they're going to get dirty and they will get grubby and they will immediately look better if they are dressed like with like a collared polo shirt as opposed to, you know, a tank top or something. And then you want to pick colors or patterns that are forgiving. So don't put them in a white shirt, don't put them in a tan shirt. I don't even buy these clothes for my kids. For my kids, I try to only buy things that are, you know, like this color. And not for my boys, but like you get the idea. A darker color palette in general rather than light, because they show every stain. So it has to be comfortable, it has to hide stains. And try to just minimize meals. On the flight to Germany, I offered the kids, I said, anybody who doesn't spill the food off their tray gets €5. Same for the way back, it was $5. So come up with ways to incentivize correct behavior. And, you know, money with kids is a huge incentive because they don't have a job, but they want to buy things. So money is always a good incentive. And I'm going to repeat my advice that I've used for years, is I've incentivized, if kids get sick in the car or at home or wherever, and they throw up somewhere in such a way that I don't have to clean it up, like in a trash can or a toilet, or I don't know, I guess if you're out and about behind a shrub or something, if they make it somewhere where I don't have to clean it up, they get $5. Now, this does not apply if everybody's already sick. Say there's this virus going around, all of us are already sick and they've already been throwing up for days. I don't give them $5 each time. But if it's just, you know, nobody was sick, out of the blue, Boaz just did this. He just got sick, but man, he made sure he made it to that trash can and he got his $5. So that works on trips too. Incentivize whatever you want to encourage. So not spilling your food off the plane tray, yes, that's a $5 reward easily. Totally worth it. Now, obviously it helps if your kids are generally taught to behave at home. I cannot express how thankful I am for my kids' behavior on the plane ride there and back. The plane ride there was 10 hours, was supposed to be 11, but we left late, so I guess they stepped on the gas and made it in 10. Flight back, same issue, it was supposed to be 12. We left 2 hours late, so they gassed it out of there and we got back in 11. So a 10-hour flight there, 11-hour flight back, that's a long flight. And there were 10 of us total, myself, and then the kids at the time of travel were 16, 14, 12, 10, 9, 7, 5, 3, and 1. And only the 1-year-old being a lap child. So they did really well. I mean, I would say collectively, the oldest 8 didn't even make a peep on either flight. Just no complaints out of any of them. And Ollie, being the 1-year-old lap baby, I would say maybe a collective 60 seconds of crying out of him on the way there and on the way back the same. So absolutely, they did amazing. I'm very proud of them, very thankful for that. So them knowing how to act at home will go a long way toward that. You know, if they're in a habit of complaining and demanding things, they're probably going to act the same on the plane, if not worse. So you want to be careful with that. And that's something that, again, is going to take time teaching them and practicing. If you have a really long trip like that ahead, then practicing, of course, is going to help a lot. So you can take field trips ahead of time where you bring the kids and they can learn how to get along and how to act and what to do and what not to do, most importantly. Bring distractions if you have a long trip. And our kids get limited screen time. I wouldn't say they get little screen time, but they get limited screen time. So on the plane, one of the things that they were allowed to do is they had unlimited screen time on the way back. Not on the way there, because to avoid jet lag, they had to sleep. You know, it was like at night when we flew, so I actually made them turn off everything and sleep. So on the way there, they were only able to like watch for a couple of hours, and then it was nighttime, and then breakfast, and we got off the plane. I saw your question. I'll get back to that in just a moment. Valerie said, with flights, how do I handle the in-flight entertainment? I just tell them if they're not sure if they're allowed to watch something, they ask me, and then I just tell them yes or no. But typically, you know, for the older kids, PG-13 is the most they're ever allowed to watch. And for the little kids, we go case by case. I mean, even like the PG movies, some of them I wouldn't allow, some of the Disney movies. Okay, I see I've been missing all these questions, and I'm sorry. I didn't realize that there's messages coming in. Okay, now I see. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick break, and I apologize, so I can see her. Valerie is traveling solo with a 9-month-old from Australia to the States in September. Great, from Japan, but you had to do to help. Okay, well, I'm going to cover that when I talk about flying with babies. Bed earlier, church was at 7. Yeah, okay, so Natalie, going to church in the evening is difficult with little kids. There's just, unfortunately, there's no good way around it. You have to just have them off schedule in that night, unfortunately. There's no way around it, unless you just wanted to have her stay up longer every other night, and I don't recommend that. My kid's bedtime is also at 7 o'clock, but on church night, it's just later, and we just have a different bedtime on church nights. Extra clothes, yes, and I'll get to that in a minute. The in-flight entertainment, so like I said, it's case by case. The little kids, well, all of us usually sit together, so I can kind of see what they're doing. And the older kids, you know, within the PG-13 range, sometimes I might veto something, but they make pretty good decisions for themselves. And that's important that they learn to do that, and that I don't just have to, you know, hover and micromanage them. So with the little kids, the in-flight entertainment is one of the things. Now, you want to pack a backpack for each of your kids for the flight, but I do not recommend bringing any luggage that you don't absolutely have to bring. So check your baggage. Do not do carry-on because you don't want to wait for your baggage on the other end. Don't do that. Check as much as you can. Only bring onto the plane what you absolutely have to have on the plane. And even then, try to be minimal. But some things that I personally would not travel without is I bring pain medication, so like baby ibuprofen. And the reason for that is that sometimes they might have an ear infection and you don't know about it until you start going up and their ears really start hurting. This was actually the case with Oliver on the flight back from Germany. We had for like the last 10 days, one at a time, each day a different kid got sick. And it only lasted like 48 to maybe 72 hours. But one of the things is that it had toward the tail end is that the kids would have like painful ears. So he actually, on the day of the flight, and I didn't think about this, but thankfully I had the medicine, he must have had an earache because he kept pulling on his ears and he was crying and he was real miserable and all congested. So I gave him the baby ibuprofen, and you know, that settled him down immediately. So that was good. I also bring Benadryl, not to get the kids to sleep. I am not recommending, and I've never done, and I don't think you should, give Benadryl just for the purpose of getting them to sleep. But I have Benadryl because I keep it in my first aid kit here in the kitchen, because you never know when kids eat something that they could be allergic to. So especially when you have a lot of kids, there's a lot of unknowns, and they could be reacting allergic to something that you've never before known them to be allergic to, especially if they're eating on the plane, which is not food that you prepare, and there could be allergens in there. It could be processed in a facility with all sorts of other stuff and weird things, or maybe foreign ingredients. So Benadryl is great because you never know when you're going to need it. There could be, I had to use the Benadryl not on the flight but the days before, just because it's always in my go bag, because the kids had one night left their windows open and all the lights on, and they attracted swarms of mosquitoes, and they got so bit up like that, like dozens of mosquito bites, and some of them were like huge welts and swollen up and itchy. So I gave them Benadryl just to dial down the response to that. So on the plane, I always have Benadryl, and I always have a baby safe painkiller like ibuprofen, just in case you need it. And hopefully you won't. Hopefully you'll fly 100 times and you'll need it once. But better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And then I also like to bring homeopathic Sleep Calm. That's the product is called Sleep Calm. It's homeopathic and it helps the babies. It's safe for anybody if they're not falling asleep. Now, I have not had to use Sleep Calm in months, but I just keep it just in case, you know, I need it. Just because it's safe, it helps get them to sleep if they need to be asleep, but they're fighting it because they're out of their element or they're upset or whatever. Personally, I don't bring a change of clothes in the kids' backpack. So in their backpacks, they have to carry their own, so it has to be really lightweight. And you want to make sure that their backpacks are at least half empty. Don't like have a travel backpack that's like crammed to the full. It's too much. Because in the airport, they might get a snack or something like that, and you want to be able to fit it in there. So each of them in their backpack had basically their own set of headphones, so they could do the in-flight entertainment. And they had a neck pillow, which was very helpful. And they each had one like activity book, which they didn't even end up using, but that way they had an alternative to the in-flight entertainment. And one snack each. I put like one candy bar, whatever. They each got to pick one at the grocery store of what they wanted to pack. And that's all. In addition to that, a water bottle, but you have to get that after security because, you know, you can't bring water through security. So that's all I would recommend putting in their backpack. You want to be really, really minimal because they're not going to use any of that. And you just end up having to encumber yourself and them with them. And then in the plane itself, in your backpack, like I said, I bring the medications, and then, you know, bring, if your baby needs a pacifier, bring way more than you think you'll need. Bring like 2 dozen, put them all in the same compartment because they might drop one, it might get dirty, it might get lost, whatever. When you're traveling with a baby, you are allowed to bring water through security. You can bring food or water or milk or whatever through security for them. So I always bring way more water than the baby needs, but because it's for the baby, you know, they let me carry water through. So that's one way to save money. You can also bring snacks, especially if you have to check into your flight early. For international flights, it's 4 hours, because otherwise you're going to end up buying food in the airport, which is really expensive. So I just brought peanut butter jelly sandwiches. And once we got all through security and we were at our gate and we still had 2 hours before the flight, that's when they ate their PB&Js. And filled their water bottles. I bought refillable water bottles, which they filled. And that way, you know, hopefully they go on the plane fed. Obviously, the obvious, you know, have them use the bathroom, change the diapers, whatever, because you don't know. I mean, when the girls and I were in New York in April, the flight back was, it was a nightmare. I mean, we were at the gate for an hour before they let us taxi because of weather. So they had us in our seats for over an hour at the gate. And then we started taxiing, but we taxied for like, again, over an hour because there was like because of the weather, all the planes had been grounded, and there was then a traffic backed up basically on the taxiway. And after we had taxied for an hour and we finally got clearance to take off, the pilot was like, sorry guys, we're now too low on fuel because there's also bad weather, so we have to fly a different route. We don't have quite enough fuel. We need to go back to the gate and refuel. So it took another 2 hours to taxi back to the gate, wait for them to refuel, and then taxi out again and get clearance to take off. We were in the plane in our seats for 4 hours before the wheels left the ground. The seatbelt lights stayed on the entire time, and they did not let us deplane when they had to go back to the gate. So use the bathroom while you're at the gate, because you don't know, you might be stuck 4 hours before they ever even leave ground, and you cannot get up and use the bathroom. And the other thing with planes is that you want to get as far to the front as you can with little kids. I find it a lot easier. I don't know why. Maybe that's just my personal preference, but it seems like the farther to the front you get, the easier it is with kids. I think that maybe they're overwhelmed by being stuck in a metal tube and being at the end of it. I don't know. I think also the turbulence is worse in the back. I think that's why I prefer to sit in the front with kids, just because then they're not as perturbed by the turbulence. And sitting right near the engines, that hum also gets them to sleep. So let's see, I've covered that. Okay, let's talk about strollers. Should you bring your stroller? I brought 4 strollers to Germany. I brought my huge, big, quadruple Wonderfold wagon, which weighs 70 pounds, just to give you an idea what kind of a behemoth this thing is. I brought that, but I didn't gate check it. I checked it with my luggage, and they put it in the oversized luggage. It's most airlines, Condor included, will fly your stroller for free. In addition to your regular baggage allowance, you can bring a stroller. You're usually allowed 2 items for a baby in addition to their regular baggage allowance. So that's typically a car seat and a stroller. But we brought 5 car seats and we brought 4 strollers. But we checked all that ahead of time when we checked our luggage. I do like to take 1 stroller to the gate. And the advantage of that is that when you gate check a stroller, you basically leave it at the plane door. Right before you walk down the jet bridge, and right before you enter the door to the plane, you leave it right there at the end of the jet bridge. And when you land, those same workers, well then, not the same workers, but those same type of workers will get it and just put it back at the end of the jet bridge. So as soon as you come off the plane, you can put the baby back in the stroller and then go into the terminal, and it makes it so much easier. So you want a stroller that's kind of lightweight and minimal for that. Again, I'm going to check for comments. Yep, I have. Okay, I am really sorry, because for some reason these comments are not coming up today. So for my gate check stroller, what I like to do is I have a Graco infant car seat, which is like a rear-facing car seat. And it basically has a base where it's just, you just put the car seat in it. That's it. It's not like a big stroller. So it's kind of just like a frame that holds the infant rear-facing car seat. 1 sec, my misters are running. And the reason why I like to use that specific setup is because, number one, it's pretty minimal, and I can take the 2 apart to make them even smaller. But in the event that the plane is not full and they have extra seats, and you have a lap baby that you didn't pay for a seat for, but they have extra seats and they are giving you a seat, then you can actually bring that car seat onto the plane if you want, and you can put that in the seat for the baby to ride in. Now, you may want to do that, or you may not. I have done it a few times and not others. The downsides are that it has to be like against the window if there's room, or if it's one of those planes where they have like a middle section and 2 side sections, that has to be in the middle seat of the middle section. So you're kind of like limited on where you can sit with that kind of setup. So I'm not really a fan of bringing the infant seat, typically because by the time a child can sit up, you can just put them in the seat next to you, as opposed to in the infant seat. And if they're too little to sit up, then you might as well just bring them in a carrier. That'll probably work better anyway. But you have that option by bringing the car seat in that stroller combo. If you wanted to take the car seat onto the plane, you could do that. And the other advantage is that it's just really, really easy to fold it down with one hand. It's very lightweight. It's sturdy, and if they break it, it's no great loss, and you can do it really quickly. So when you get to the end of the jet bridge and there's like 200 people behind you, you're not like messing around there and holding everything up. So that's why I like that particular stroller setup. And I also like to bring a carrier onto the plane, even with Ollie, who usually I don't carry in a carrier anymore. I still brought my little baby just because on a long flight, you know, to hold him for an extended period of time and walk up and down the aisles with him, if I had to do that, it's a lot more comfortable in a carrier. Now, thankfully, on the Germany flight, I did not have to do that. He just sat in my lap and slept nicely the rest of the time in the seat next to me. Now, you also don't want to rely on the in-flight Wi-Fi because sometimes it's out when it shouldn't be. So what you want to do is you want to download stuff ahead of time onto your phone or device for the baby. And I'm not exaggerating. Ollie has this CoComelon episode that he loves. It's called JJ's Animal Time, and it's available on Prime Video. And I downloaded it to my phone. Lasts about 30 minutes, and he absolutely loves that particular episode. There's also 2 episodes of Baby Shark that he absolutely loves, but they each only like 1 minute long, so they don't work as well because you have to just keep looping these same 2 60-second songs for hours, which gets boring really fast. But this JJ's Animal Time, that was like probably 90% credit goes to them for Ollie being so perfect on the flights, because during takeoff and landing, when the seatbelt sign is on, not only did I have to have him in my lap during that time, but they had like a little seatbelt for him that connected to my seatbelt, and he actually had to stay strapped into that on my lap. And he was not a fan. He was like writhing and trying to get out and fighting me. But you put that phone in front of him and you turn on JJ's Animal Time, and he would just go silent and he would just watch that, and then he'd go to sleep. So CoComelon saved the day for the other 300 passengers who didn't have to listen to my baby crying at all. So whatever that is, I'm not saying put your kid in front of that every single day while you hang on Facebook or something. But I think when you're traveling on a long flight, find what they like on a screen, download it, and have it on your phone ready for them. The airlines do not usually let you play things with sound. So you might want to think about bringing headphones that your baby will tolerate. But even so, I usually just play it without headphones on low, and only one time has a flight attendant told me that I had to turn it off. She was just crabby about everything, so I don't think she would have been pleased with anything. I've never any other time been told that, because usually I keep it very low. You can't hear it past my row, and it's definitely preferable to a screaming baby. So people are very understanding of that. So I think we've covered it all on flights. Dress in layers, that's obvious, and maybe bring, well, not maybe, bring, I'm really very much in favor of this, bring a light blanket for the baby. Don't bring anything polyester. Polyester is just horrible anytime, but especially on a plane, it will just make the worst static electricity at that altitude. So you want to bring like a cotton blanket or some natural fiber blanket. It should be big, but it should be lightweight. So I love those muslin blankets, those really thin, large receiving blankets, but they're much bigger than a regular receiving blanket. They're made of like muslin cloth. Aden and Aeneas has them, but I think a bunch of other brands have them now. Those are perfect because they're really lightweight, but they're large. And the fact that they're large works great because number one, you can cover more than one kid with it. Number two, if one side gets dirty because the toddler wiped their mouth on it, you can still use the other side. You can use it as a sunshade. You can even tie it into a carrier if you have to. It's not heavy, so I think those are perfect. I bring those. And then obviously prepare for any eventualities. Bring tissues, bring wipes, bring diapers, those things. So I think we've covered it all for flying. Yeah, check all your bags. Bribe the kids. Okay, another bribe that I keep in the diaper bag all the time in a secret compartment are lollipops. I have those organic, I don't know, is it called Eden's Garden? I don't know. I buy them in the big 5-pound tub. Lollipops, and I keep a bag of those lollipops in the front of my diaper bag all the time, because while I'm all about at home, you know, teaching the kids and having expectations and disciplining them, being in public at 30,000 feet altitude is not the time for that. That's the time for, here's a lollipop and Cocomelon, and I will do anything to get you to be quiet because 300 other passengers do not want to witness me using this as a parenting opportunity to show you that you don't get what you cry for. So that's the time for bribes and doing whatever it takes to get the kids to quiet down in consideration of other passengers. And then, you know, at home you can work on those things. They're not going to be permanently harmed because they watched too many movies and had too many lollipops while flying. And I can say this with some kind of degree of certainty because I've seen the other end of it. So my oldest son, who is now 21, and who was horrified when I told him about my Cocomelon hack on the plane. He was horrified that I even let my kids watch Cocomelon. But when he was little, I did the same stuff, you know, to get him across the Atlantic. So you can both bribe them with Cocomelon and have them still grow up to hate Cocomelon. Not that I hate Cocomelon, but it won't permanently make them. Don't worry, your 21-year-old will not still want to watch Cocomelon, is what I'm saying. So I think I've covered it all. Plan, plan, plan. Bring more than you need of emergency supplies. Bring less than you need of snacks and entertainment. And yeah, just it's doable. You can do it. You need to do it. Take pictures and teach your kids the #1 rule of traveling. Let's do a test here. Hey, Chloe, what's the #1 rule of traveling?
Be flexible.
That's right, be flexible. You passed the test, Chloe. So teach your kids, you know, when you travel, everybody can't get what they want, but everybody will have fun. And when things don't go the way you planned, that's part of traveling. And in the grand scheme of things, if you're going to visit family out of state and you're driving by car for a day or flying for hours, that's still a very small percentage of the total trip. So they need to just grind it out and muscle through it. And it's okay. It's okay to do things you don't like. It's okay to do things that you don't like for 12 hours straight. It's okay to stay in your chair for 12 hours and not complain. And it's good for kids to learn these lessons. It's a small price to pay in exchange for going to see their cousins or aunts and uncles or some other cool place that they don't usually do. And it probably beats sitting at home and doing schoolwork at your desk. So be flexible, look on the positive, you know, just roll with the punches. Things will go wrong when you travel. And try to prepare for them as much as you can. And teach the kids to not complain. That's a huge one. So anyway, I'm going to look through the messages because for some reason I can only see them if I put my finger on it. And not even then all the time. So up here we go. Okay, it starts me from the top every time. Jordan, Foundation Quad Stroller. Oh, so yours, you say that yours climbed out and ran off. So that's actually why I like the Wonderfold. The Wonderfold has really high sides and there's no getting out of them. Unless, you know, they climb out the seats, but you can take the seats down. It's kind of like a playpen on wheels, so they can't just climb out of it. I answered that one. The extra clothes. I do bring extra clothes for the little kids. I'm not sure if I circled back to that, but I don't put it in their backpacks. I put it in mine. All right. Well, Valerie, best of luck to you as you fly with your 9-month-old from Australia to the States. I wonder how long of a flight that is. Maybe you can leave that in the comments. I would be interested to see that. But anyway, those are my tips for traveling with kids. Probably nothing new that you didn't already know. Obviously, have the older ones help with younger ones. That kind of goes without saying. Pair them up. I like to, so when I pair kids up, I like to pair the oldest one that's a helper with the youngest one that needs help. So like, you know, the 12-month-old gets paired with the 16-year-old. And then the 3-year-old gets paired with the 14-year-old. And the 5-year-old gets paired with the 12-year-old. And then 8 and 10 just kind of stick together and watch each other. And then sometimes, certain of my kids like certain siblings the most, so I'll pair them with those. So, man, another flight to North Carolina. I do have another tip, actually. I do have another tip. If you are flying into the United States, and this is really important, this is important whether you're a citizen or whether you're a visitor from out of the country. If you are flying to the United States, at all costs, try to not change planes in the US. If you have to change planes because there's no direct flight, try to change planes outside the US. So for instance, to fly to Phoenix, there's only one airline that flies direct, that's Condor. And they only fly direct part of the year. So let's say you don't want to fly Condor, or you're wanting to fly during that time of the year when they're not flying. You have different options. You could change in Seattle, Washington, you could change in Chicago, you could change in Newark, or you could fly direct from Phoenix to London or from Phoenix to Paris. Those are the only cities that we fly direct to in Europe, I believe. And then from there, connect to Frankfurt or Munich or wherever it is you're trying to go. If you have the option between changing planes in the US or changing planes outside the US, do outside the US. And I will tell you why. In the US, you have to go through customs and immigration at the first port of entry. So let's say I'm coming from Frankfurt to Phoenix, but I have to change planes in Chicago. When I get to Chicago, the airline will put all of our luggage, strollers, bags, everything. I mean, 9 bags, 5 car seats, 4 strollers, carts full of stuff. They will put all of that on a luggage belt. We have to take it off there and load it onto carts. And then we have to push those through passport check and push those through customs, because we have to bring our own luggage through customs to declare it. And then we put it back on the belt and it goes back on the plane, and we are now outside of the international, and we are now going through a national terminal, and you have to recheck it, and it continues. This takes, no joke, at least 2 hours, but for family like mine, it takes like 4 hours. And connections seem to never be timed long enough to actually go through this song and dance. So you either have a really long connection, which will make your flight a lot longer, or your total travel time, or you miss your connection, which is just the worst headache. But even if everything goes perfectly, it's still a huge headache. I mean, even if you just had to get off one plane and walk to another plane without even having to deal with any luggage or customs or immigration, that would still be a pain, because you just got all the kids situated. They might be asleep. Even that would be a pain. But the customs and immigration, having to take your baggage through yourself, do yourself a favor. Don't ever change planes in the United States if you're coming from out of the country. Do whatever you can to change planes before you get to the US. Like if I had to make a connection to get to Frankfurt, I would fly through Paris, not my first choice. I would fly through London, probably Heathrow. So that's a tip for flying with babies, and this applies to citizens as well as non-citizens. At all costs, if you're flying internationally, do not change planes in the US. You'll thank me later. So I think that was it for questions. There was one other question. Yep, Valerie. Yep, changing planes in the States. Yeah, it's awful. Yes, and LAX is horrible for transfers. So is Chicago, by the way. Chicago has horrible transfers. So yeah, you're having another connection to North Carolina. Man, that's Valerie, I would probably just book that as separate flights, and I would probably just stop wherever you get to the US and spend a night there, and then get on another flight to North Carolina, just because, that's a lot. Marina asks about tips for long drives. My tip for long drives, don't do it. That's my tip for long drives. The longest I drive is 3 hours at a time, for a max of 6 hours in a day. So start early would be one of my tips if you have to do it. Like get up real early, get up at 4, get out the door by 5. Even if the kids stay awake, they'll usually be pretty mellow and chill until about 7-ish. And then you can string them along for like maybe another hour and then stop for breakfast. So you've got your first 3 hours under your belt, stop for breakfast, and then let them play all morning, have lunch, and then after lunch get them back in the car, drive 3 more hours. So that's how I would do it. 3 hours before breakfast, try to end up somewhere where it's semi conducive to spending a morning. Maybe there's a museum or a park or something, and then finish out your drive in the afternoon while they're napping, or at least they're quiet because they just ate. That would be 3 hours plus 3 hours for a max of 6 hours. I would not do more than 3 hours at a time. I would not do more than 6 hours in a day, and I would not do more than 2 days like that. And if it were more than 2 days, I would not do more than 3 hours per day. But if at all possible, don't do it. It's, yeah. And we did a lot of driving in Germany. It went well, but we never did more than 3 hours, and we didn't do it every day or even multiple days in a row. Or, yeah, I would say that long drives are to be avoided. I saw, where is it? Oh, there we go. So Valor, yep, fly into Phoenix and stop by the church. That's right, you should. And then you don't have to fly into LAX. Although I'm not sure that, I think we have direct flights from Australia. Actually, I think we do from Phoenix to Australia. So 14 hours. 14 hours from Australia to the States. Yeah, that's, I figure it was a little longer than Germany. That's a long flight. I just learned about the longest flight in the world, which is operated, I think, by Australian Airlines. It goes from somewhere in Australia to the UK. You can fly direct, and it's like a 24-hour flight, maybe even slightly more. So I think that covers all of it. If you think of any questions later on, leave them in the comments. Thank you for joining me. I hope something in here gave you an idea or helps you when you are traveling with kids. Always leave earlier than you need to be. Bring more emergency supplies than you thought necessary, and less entertainment and food, because those things you can easily get along the way. Anyway, safe travels. I hope you get to go somewhere with your kids this summer still, and stay safe out there. Bye.